random person, Sab Nino here. I'm trying out a new analysis editing format. Let me know if you like it. If you do, I might continue it more so I can make more videos like this and pump out more content. But anyway, a few days ago, the first ever SpongeBob crossover has hit our screens, if you don't count Big Time Rush. And what does the series crossover with after 20 plus years of not doing so? Itself. Yeah, it just crosses over with the other spin-offs, Camp Coral and The Patrick Star Show. What's even more interesting is that this isn't one big episode, but 4.5 ones wrapped up into one package. So I wanted to take a look at each episode, how well does it work standalone, and if it's weird enough of a concept to fit with the Tidal Zone theming. So let's begin. Before I look at the episodes, I want to briefly discuss what the Tidal Zone is. It's a parody of the Twilight Zone named after Hillenburg's comic, The Tidal Zone. Okay, I don't have evidence towards the latter, but come on, would you be surprised if it was? I've never seen The Twilight Zone, but it's a series about characters dealing with surreal and disturbing events. That sums up Tidal Zone pretty well. It's just episodes about surreal stuff happening. The first instance of this is in the season 11 episode, No Pictures Please, where Patrick gives Rube a tour of Bikini Bottom. The most surreal thing that happened in the episode is honestly the visual gags, and the ending with Rube never existing. Then there was the Night Patty, which is much more surreal, showcasing a weird side to the Krusty Krab during the night. Since we're in the most surreal era of SpongeBob ever, having Tidal Zone honestly fits a ton, especially if they want to tell stories that would be too out there for a regular episode. Though if I'm being honest, some of the premises in this show feel so out there that they would fit right into this format, such as cuddly hugs, swamp mates, don't feed the clowns, maybe even SpongeBob's Road to Christmas. Now that I've established what the Tidal Zone is, now we can look at each segment individually. Even though this is a crossover event, the first thing you see is the SpongeBob theme song, and it's put on Amazon under season 13 of the main series. So what does this start with? Patrick Star Show, of course. It starts off with Patrick interviewing Captain Quasar and Patron with a bunch of weird low random jokes. Show might be playing into the online stigma of the series being just random nonsense for the sake of random nonsense. But it isn't too bad since it's only lasts a few minutes. The plot starts with Patrick accidentally shrinking everyone, including himself, with Patron Shrink Ray. Tiny hijinks ensue, but Grand Pat isn't shrunken, and mistakes the Star family for vermin, so he tries killing them as the Stars fight back. Eventually, Grand Pat was accidentally set to Patrick's time machine. This will be important later on. They get smaller since Patrick used Jumbo Grow without reading the fine print. It shrinks people. They become the size of atoms, but grow back due to a visual gag, I guess. And that's the end. If I'm being honest, for a Patrick Star Show episode, this one is honestly pretty tame, for SpongeBob standards, and especially for Patrick standards. SpongeBob has done shrinking episodes even before the Tidal Zone, and Patrick has done weirder premises I think would have been more worthy of the Tidal Zone. For example, there's Who Dad and Back, Terror at 20,000 Leagues. Hell, even the upcoming episode Fitzpatrick would have been more fitting. Despite not being super weird, I still think it's an enjoyable start. It's nothing spectacular, but despite shrinking being a concept done in SpongeBob before, they do enough with it to make it their own. Next up, we have an episode of SpongeBob. In this one, we see an alternate timeline where everyone in Bikini Bottom is a robot. There isn't really a plot to this one. Gary got a hold of Squidbot, hijinks ensue, and it ends with Sandy fusing everyone into a giant mecha sandroid. Everything else is just, everyone's a robot. Now what? I was pretty confused at first, but after watching this event all 3 nights in a row, I think that's all it needs. It's just SpongeBob and crew living a normal day in Binary Bottom, and how different it is to Bikini Bottom. Another thing I enjoy is that they don't make it a utopia, but they don't make it a dystopia either. It's just machines with their own quirks and qualities. Like SpongeBob's stutter, Gary's shell curve recharging after he eats, Mr. Krabs being stuck in fire mode, the Krusty Krab serving batteries, Plankbot being a wind-up robot, Karen being a fish, and Sandy being wherever the this is. Honestly, I don't understand why Sandra the way she is. Everything else I get 100%, but how did they get
I want to harvest everyone's energy
from Sandy? The inclusion of Fish Karen is a funny joke, but it makes me question the world of Binary Bottom even more. Is Karen the only fish that survived? Who created the robots? How did they take over? These questions aren't important, it's just fun to speculate. Also, why is Goo Lagoon called Lube Lagoon? Is there a robot gag I'm not getting? Because all I saw was a dirty joke. There's also very minor touches that make this episode really shine. I love how the backgrounds have rust to them to maintain the SpongeBob feel, and that the music is more techno. Oh, and since this is a crossover event, Patron from The Patrick Show is how Patrick is represented in Binary Bottom, and Grandpa arrives at Lube Lagoon once everything gets crazy. So far, I think this episode best utilizes the Tidal Zone concept to the fullest, along with its crossover elements, as little as that is. The Switch Glitch is the first and only Camp Coral episode in the special, and the first time I talk about Camp Coral as a whole. Since I might want to talk about this in the future, I'll keep it brief here. I enjoy it a lot. It has some nice character dynamics you don't see often, like Sandy being a more frequent part of the cast, and the stories are more grounded than the main show currently. Sure, the animation is rough around the edges, but the beginning episodes still look good, and it's been improving as the show goes on. In the Switch Glitch, Karen and Patrick switch bodies. At first I questioned why they chose Karen of all characters, since she isn't that present in Camp Coral, but after watching this, I understand why. Patrick and Karen's body is honestly what you'd expect. Plankton wanting Karen to help, but Patrick being stupid, but at least some fun visual gags at least. Karen and Patrick's body is where it really shines though, since Karen is figuring out what it's like to carry a meat vessel. Plus, one thing I really appreciate about this episode is that instead of just having Karen's VA play Karen in Patrick's body and vice versa, they keep their original voices, but they take it a step further by doing their best impression of each other. Karen's just what you'd expect, just Jill Talley doing a deeper voice. And honestly, that's all it needs. But Bill Fagerbaki's Karen voice is so unique that I didn't know it was him at first.
Law of fluid dynamics. Post-structuralism. 395 AD. The sinking of Atlantis.
This is honestly one of my favorite body swap stories for that alone. And I wish more shows did this since it's so much fun here. The special ends with Sandy using a machine to switch them back, and everyone in Camp Coral switches bodies with Patrick. Honestly, this ending is just a summary of Salsa and Basilicus. Oh, and Grandpa shows up in a non-speaking cameo. That's all they do to connect it other than the ending monologue. I forgot to mention this, but Frenchie shows up at the beginning and ending of each episode. And that's why I'm wearing his little hat. Aren't I adorable? Which I say is a great way to make these episodes standalone. I like this episode a lot, but is it worthy of the Tidal Zone? A little bit, but I think Camp Coral is done weirder as well. Mainly Cabin of Curiosity, Midnight Snack Attack, hell, and Search of Camp Nudist is even weirder for premise alone. I'll give a little slack here though, since body swapping is a completely original concept for SpongeBob, so it's different enough. Despite being a crossover event, SpongeBob gets the most episodes, which I guess makes sense. But I would have just stuck with one of each, since spoiler alert, this episode doesn't feel that surreal. It's just a cursed phone booth that hypnotizes Mr. Krabs into doing generous things. It's a fine idea, but I sorta wish they pushed it further. The phone booth is run by a literal demon. Go nuts! The crazy thing that happens is Krabs being in the coin slot instead of the demon, and Plankton just owning the Krusty Krab at the end. I honestly think this episode is just okay. It really doesn't need to be a Tidal Zone premise. The opening segment with Frenchie doesn't even make sense. It starts with an art gallery, but the episode has no connection to art whatsoever. Plus there's no connection to the other 3 episodes. There's a short! Here's the funny thing about You're Going to Pay phone. There's a short at the end, and it wraps up the entire special. It ends with time travel hijinks with Grandpa. He invades the SpongeBob theme song, drags along a cowboy, then ends up with the Star family as a bunch of flies. As a whole, That's not the worst way to end the special. But there's one massive issue that I think is a really big problem. All of these episodes are not only meant to be a part of this Tidal Zone event, but also standalone episodes. With the other episodes, you can watch them on their own without prior knowledge to the event due to Frenchie. You might get confused by Grandpat's cameos, but it's not a huge hindrance. Here, you pretty much need to watch this entire event first in order to understand this short. Why the hell is this even a short? And more importantly, why is this listed as a SpongeBob episode? Most of this comes from The Patrick Show. If you're just binging SpongeBob without any prior knowledge of Patrick, you're going to think this is nonsense for the sake of nonsense. They don't even push the time travel aspect far enough to justify its existence. Why not have Grandpa show up in the present day Bikini Bottom, and have SpongeBob and Patrick help him get home after the theme song segment? Therefore, it can be standalone and introduce newcomers to Grandpa as a character into the main series. I don't mind spin-off elements being introduced to the main series. They just need to establish it so people who only watch the main show don't get lost. And keep in mind, SpongeBob exists in a vacuum, so each episode pretty much needs to stand on its own. When Narlene and Navi was introduced in the main show, some people might be confused on who they are, but they provide enough context to show newcomers that SpongeBob and them met at summer camp. A Skin Wrinkle in Time is literally Grandpat's first appearance in SpongeBob SquarePants, and it doesn't even feel like a SpongeBob episode. They should have either made this a full episode and extended You're Going to Pay phone, or only include this in the Tidal Zone and cut out the Grandpa cameos in all of the other episodes for later airings, since having this honestly ruins the show being standalone, and I think it might be my least favorite episode solely for this factor. Before I talk about the Tidal Zone as a whole, let's rank every episode in this event. Number 5 goes to A Wrinkle in Time. I just vented about this one, so let's move on. Number 4, You're Going to Pay phone. Good idea that wasn't pushed far enough, so it balances out to a mid. Number 3, Shrinking Stars. It does a decent job setting up the special, but I think the story could have been weirder, given that the Patrick Star Show is the weirdest out of the 3 shows. Number 2, The Switch Glitch. An original idea for SpongeBob and Camp Coral, which although doesn't fully embrace the Tidal Zone, is still a really enjoyable watch. And number 1, Welcome to Binary Bottom. The most unique episode out of the bunch with a ton of fun ideas, and it takes full advantage of the Tidal Zone. Now that we've reviewed every segment, let's answer the question in the title of the video. The Tidal Zone. Is it too weird or not weird enough? Honestly, I think it's split down the middle. We have A Skin Wrinkle in Time that's way too weird to be a standalone SpongeBob episode. We have You're Going to Pay phone and Shrinking Stars that don't push the Tidal Zone far enough, and The Switch Glitch, which is just smack dab in the middle. As a whole, I wish they pushed the weirdness further, especially since SpongeBob is in its most surreal era ever. Welcome to Binary Bottom is what I think a Tidal Zone episode should be, a bizarre concept blown out of proportion. What if Shrinking Stars pushed the shrinking concept by having them gradually shrink to the point where they see bizarre microscopic creatures? What if You're Going to Pay phone pushed the curse further than hypnosis, by having weird stuff happen to the Krusty Krab? Have it be a weird trippy version of the Curse of the Hex. I honestly don't know how you'd make the Switch Glitch more surreal without being too forced, so I say they could have found an episode more fitting for the Tidal Zone. When it comes to Tidal Zone as a whole, it was a cool experiment, but it's riddled with issues, and I hope they never do this sort of thing again. It's really hard to juggle an event with 3 shows, have them cross over, and have it be episodic at the same time. It reminds me a lot of the miniseries they used to do, with Legends of Bikini Bottom and Runaway Road Trip. It works there because you don't need prior knowledge to the previous episodes to understand them, but with some aspects of the Tidal Zone, you pretty much need to understand it, especially A Skin Wrinkle in Time. Personally, I think this should have been a standalone TV movie. Therefore, you can fully embrace the Tidal Zone without worrying about pushing it too far, or not enough. And so you can do more with the crossover aspect. Have Grandpa accidentally travel through time through Camp Coral and SpongeBob, and have them help him get back to his timeline. Maybe have the Tidal Zone throughout. Have all three shows deal with an obstacle created by the zone that they all have to overcome. Have a Skin Wrinkle in Time be an epic climax. I think that would have been a better way to have all three shows cross over and fix a lot of the issues the Tidal Zone faced. Plus, it would do a better job introducing all three shows to newcomers without worrying about interfering with the non-existent continuity. But as is, I don't hate it. I just don't think it's a good format for SpongeBob SquarePants, since it's not lore-heavy enough to warrant something like this. What do you think of the Tidal Zone? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you mixed on it like I am? Comment below. And as always, it's all Sab from here.